Hi guys, this is our lesson on tessellations. We have two objectives. Our first is to demonstrate knowledge of the different types of tessellations in their history and art. Number two is create a 9-shaped tessellation inspired by a mythical creature that uses pattern and repetition in its design and color. Our words worth knowing is tessellation. A tessellation is a repeated pattern of shapes fitting close together without gaps or overlapping. So let's look at some examples. So all of these are different types of tessellations, but if you'll notice, they all have repeated shapes and these shapes fit together. So it's kind of like a puzzle, except within a puzzle, the shapes are different. They aren't repeated, whereas in a tessellation, they are very mathematical and fit together perfectly. And you will see different types of tessellations in the history of art, and you'll also just see them in everyday items like a tile floor, or as you're walking up to a house, bricks will fit together in a tessellation sometimes. So there's decorative ways to use tessellations and ways around in life that we see them. One artist that is explicitly known for using tessellations is M.C. Escher, and here are some examples of his work. So these are a variety of different types. And he was born in 1898 and died in 1972. He was from the Netherlands, although he did travel a whole lot, especially a lot all over Italy. He was born Moritz Cornelius Escher. He is one of the world's most famous graphic artists, and his work is displayed all over the world, and it's very popular. I'd be really surprised if you hadn't seen one of his works before, even if you didn't recognize it as his. So during his lifetime, he made 448 lithographs, woodcuts, wood engravings, and more than 2,000 drawings and sketches. So he was very prolific. His work features mathematical explorations such as impossible shapes, tessellations, polyhedra, and symmetry. So he was very interested in these mathematical types of designs. And he was inspired by nature and also Moorish architecture and design. And like I said before, he traveled all over Italy and was really influenced by the patterns and things he saw in the artwork there. So all of his artwork has pattern and repetition, which are two of our principles of design. And you can see he also uses color to emphasize the pattern and repetition in his work. So they're all very, very graphical, cartoony in a way, right? So here's an example of two more. So these are also different types of tessellations. So the one on the right is rotating on an axis. The same with the one on the left. You can see how they almost spin. So the same with these. And then he also has some that are more drawing in nature, but they still incorporate these mathematical types of shapes. I really like that chameleon one on the left. And then there's different versions where it has color in it because it's a type of printmaking artwork. So you can make different versions of it pretty easily. And then you could see the one on the right where he has the images of the faces, and then there's a face flipped in there. So here is another example. So there are two tessellation types. One is called regular. Regular tessellations are created by using only one repeated polygon shape. They're made with triangles, squares, or hexagons. The second type is an irregular tessellation, and those are created by using different sizes or shapes of polygons to create a pattern. We're just going to be doing a regular tessellation based on a square. So let's look at some different ways we can create tessellations. The first is called a translation. This is what I would consider level 1. So you start with that square, you draw a design, and then you take that little piece and you cut it and bring it below. So this is a simple translation tessellation, and your opposite side should be parallel and match. And then I will have some demo videos for you going over each of these. So this is something you could use with a square, a hexagon, or a parallelogram. So this is also a translation tessellation. This is a little bit more level 2. So not only are you going to take one side, cut, and paste it over, you're also going to do that with an opposite side. So it creates a more interesting type of tessellation. If you do level 1, you're going to have sides that are just completely straight. But again, that's up to you and what you want to do. So this is creating a more complex design, and it makes a change to both sides. So those sides should be parallel. A different type is called a glide. So a glide tessellation is more level 3, depending on how many sides you do. So for a glide tessellation, your opposite sides should be parallel, and then the design piece should be flipped. So if you look at that example, you have the design cut from the front, you're going to cut it out, and then you're going to flip it. So what happens when you make your pattern, you end up having to move your piece back and forth so it flips. You can also make this harder by, like the translation tessellation before, is doing more than one side. So you would do the same thing to another side and then you would flip it. So it's up to you how complicated you want to make it. And again, there'll be a demo video on this. There's also what's called a rotation tessellation, which again I would consider level 3. So you're going to start with that square. You're going to draw a design on one side, and then instead of moving it top to bottom or rotating it, you take it and you turn it on the axis. So you can see that in that number 3, you take that shape and then you're just going to rotate it around that corner. So it makes a really interesting type of shape, and then when you put it together, you're going to be rotating it around a point to make that tessellation. So your adjacent sides must be congruent and then rotated on the end point. And this can also be done with any type of regular shaped polygon. So for your practice, you're going to use the 3x3 inch squares that are on tag board. And I want you to practice creating at least 3 different tessellation shapes. Don't just go with the first one you make. Practice this and really come up with a unique shape. Out of those shapes that you create, choose one, and you're going to sketch different designs or creatures to fill in that space. So I have examples in class for you to look at, but you want to see what types of things you can make out of that shape. For expert level is you could try this with a triangle or a different geometric shape, but when you're cutting out that shape, all the sides have to be exactly equal or it will not work when you try to put it together in a big pattern. So if you want to do that, just talk to me in class and we can work it out. And then check in with me once you have at least 4 sketches, and then I'm going to have you plan out your project with color, and then we'll get going. I can't wait to see what designs you come up with. Good job, guys.